Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Postmodern Polymath Podcast. And we're on episode 103. Lyman is dead. Sorry, that's a horrible thing to say. No, he's not dead. He has a major fever, and he's on antibiotics. Apparently the Russians poisoned him, like with the radiation, like they did the other guy. No, I'll stop. Okay, so anyway, I'm kind of sad that he's not on because I needed to. Well, I didn't need it, but this is going to be a cool conversation. Let me go ahead and introduce him. He's a former Scientologist turned anti-cult activist and critical thinker. He has a book called Scientology A to Xenu. I like that. An Insider's Guide to What Scientology is All About. And he started a YouTube channel in 2013 where he's not only discussed Scientology at length, but have interviewed psychologists, sociologists, cult recovery experts, and former members of many other destructive cults about their experiences. And he's going to be on here. This is fascinating shit to me. So anyway, this guy is awesome, and I hope you will join me in welcoming Chris Shelton. How's it going, Chris?
Hey. Glad to be here.
So like I said earlier, just before, he's dead. Lyman is. So he really wanted.
I'm kind of bummed. I was looking forward to talking to him here.
Yeah, maybe you bring
Lyman,
him back.
Get better.
Yeah, we talk about. So you got other shit to talk about. So I mean, like all the other cults in general are fascinating to me.
Me too.
There's a lot of cults I could talk about. All right. Well, specifically on this episode, we're going to talk about Scientology. One of my favorite subjects.
The one and only thing in the entire world that I can say I am truly an expert at.
Hey, well, it's better than most people.
Yeah.
Just a little background. I read Going Clear right around when it came out, and it's been a while ago when it came out. That book blew me away. That was so in-depth and just so well-researched.
Yes.
And I was just like, holy shit, this is great. And when I heard it was coming out the documentary was coming out on HBO, I was stoked. And then that was I consider it like a companion piece to the book. I feel like people should still read the book. And sorry, cats are everywhere. So why don't you first of all, just give a general idea of like I just read your blurb, but why don't you fill in the details a little bit?
Of course. I am a former Scientologist. I was raised in Scientology since I was about 4 years old, is when my parents first got involved with it. I wasn't real hardcore as a child. I learned about it, got raised with it, learned the terminology, the belief system. I mean, it was how I thought of reality. And so when I was a teenager, I started doing classes. Right out of high school, I started working for the church, and I did that for 8 years in Santa Barbara, California, where I had gone to school and stuff, and then graduated high school, and then started working at the Church of Scientology there. 8 years in Santa Barbara, and then I joined what's called the Sea Organization, the SEA. Sea is a naval ocean organization, sort of a paramilitary outfit that kind of is the core of Scientology. The thing that really keeps it going is the Sea Organization, and these are dedicated 24/7. This is all they do is Scientology, right? They live it, breathe it, work it, live on the bases, act like they're in the military. It's like that kind of an outfit. And I worked there for 17 years until I finally got out at the end of 2012. And I finally got on the internet for real because I'd been policing and kept off the internet during all that time. So I finally got on the internet, right? And I had all the time I was in Scientology, I'd never heard the word Xenu. I didn't know about the weird space alien stuff in the same way that everybody out in the big wide world knows about it. I knew some stuff, but I didn't know that stuff. And so once I got out and I had access to the internet and I started seeing things I wasn't supposed to see, I then saw more and more and more and more and more. And so by the end of 2013, I was publicly, I had spoken out against Scientology. I had totally deconverted, so to speak. And I became an activist against mind control, cult control, thought reform, anything like that. I just propaganda. I don't like it. I don't like people's heads being interfered with for nefarious purposes. And that's basically what destructive cults are. So that's kind of my background and history on this.
So we talked a little earlier before the show a little bit, and you said you'd been into it since you were a kid. Is that right?
Yeah. 4 years old is when my parents got involved with it.
And so from that point, you just, I guess, if you're raised with it, is it kind of the same idea as a regular religion, like Christianity being raised as a evangelical or whatever, you know?
Yep, that's exactly. Like, I knew the words. I could sing some of the tune, right? I believed that I was a spiritual being called a thetan. That's the name for it in Scientology, is a thetan. And it's different from, it's basically the same thing as a spirit, but it's just a different word. I believed that I had this thing called the reactive mind, which was not my brain. It was a sort of a separate energy unit that I carried around with me. I believed that this reactive mind contained all of the trauma and accumulated stress of my entire existence as a thetan, not just as this body. And I believe that we live life after life after life. You have a body and you run it, and the body dies, and then you go get another body. That was what I was taught as a child. And I believed all of those things implicitly for a very, very long time.
Although, I guess people might consider that strange unless you're like here. I understand the religion aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we all know how it's better to get them young so you can indoctrinate them. And we
That's
can
right.
use the same thing for Scientology or religion, really any ideology. I guess it really doesn't have to be specifically religion based per se.
That's right.
So going through that, there's so much. All right.
It's a big topic, and we're not even going to cover half.
Yeah, I don't
tonight,
because
so just fire away whatever.
I want to go with your experiences more so than like the minutia, because I know about all that already, and I don't like.
You're not impressed?
No, I'm impressed. I've just read so much about it already. Although I did when you said you didn't know about Xenu, or you knew. Don't you have to be like a certain O level and look at the fucking piece of paper he wrote on or whatever the
That's
fuck
right.
it was?
That's right. OT3.
Yeah,
OT3. Yeah, and I never got that far. I only got to the level of clear. So they don't give you the dark Xenu secrets at clear. They give it to you at OT3. So I never got to that level.
You spend all that money. So did you? Why don't you just give me a kind of a general over? What was it? What was kind of the mood, right? So obviously, if you're in a cult, you don't really know you're in a cult, I guess.
No, absolutely not.
So
and especially when you're raised in it. I mean, for God's sake, it's reality, right? Growing up as a Scientologist, or growing up with Scientology in my life as prominently as it was, because when my parents got involved, they got really involved. They worked for the Scientology in Pasadena, where I grew up. All our friends were Scientologists. They would have parties on the weekends, and all their friends would come over. We'd go over to their places, and they were drinking beer and talking Scientology, or talking this or talking that, right? I remember these conversations as a kid. And it was a lively, interested, kind of, everybody was really into it. And it was hopeful. And there was the idea that they were doing something positive for society. At that level, that's the reality of Scientology for public Scientologists, is they're part of something exciting and interesting and fascinating. I mean, the data itself is very fascinating. Even if you just look at it from a science fiction point of view, it's not all internally coherent, by the way. There's tons and tons and tons of contradictions. What? Oh, yeah. Well, the funny thing is, it didn't have to be that way if you think about it, right? But it evolved so organically, and Hubbard was just such a pathological liar. He just bump out story after story in these lectures. And I don't know that he knew in 1952 or 1953, when he was saying this stuff about galactic civilizations and interstellar battles happening here on Earth and stuff. I mean, I don't know that he really had the idea then that this was going to go as far as it was going to go. He was talking to a room full of people. I mean, that was about what he could get, So it was kind of interesting to see where all this went and how it all evolved. But I'm getting ahead of myself. As a kid, it was fun. Right, it was interesting. That was sort of, if you asked me what was Scientology like, I would have said, well, it's kind of serious when you're doing it, because if you go into the organization like I did as a kid and you're a little rugrat running around, nobody really wants you around. And so I always got shoved in a room or something. But you'd walk around and I'd see the adults doing the Scientology classes or doing some Scientology auditing, and people were generally in a pretty good mood. So then I start doing classes as a teenager, and it's pretty serious. This is the first time I was ever introduced to the Sea Organization, because I only knew about the public Scientology and what my parents had been involved in, and I never had known anything about this Sea Organization before. And so a person in Santa Barbara who was running the Santa Barbara church was a Sea Org member. So I was like, what's that? Oh, well, they're hardcore Scientologists. They work out at Los Angeles, and, you don't give them any guff, and they're very dedicated and hardcore. And I was like, okay. Well, she would scream and yell at the staff all day, every day. I mean, I'd be sitting in the classroom trying to read my book in the classroom, and right on the other side of the wall was her office. And she's ripping into the staff. Just ruthlessly, how fucking dare you not have your stats up, and where's the solution? Where is it? I mean, she'd be screaming this. I'm just sort of exaggerating a little bit. It got a little uncomfortable to be sitting in the classroom when that was going on, but somehow I was separating the subject matter from that. That was an anomaly. That was an aberration. There was something wrong with that woman. But that didn't represent all of Scientology to me, right? I still had plenty of other examples of happy, good Scientology people who were telling me how great Scientology was. And I'm an impressionable 15-year-old at this point. So, I would have said Scientology was mostly about good stuff, but the Sea Org seems a little rough. I don't know that I'm too down with those guys. They seem a little bit too serious. Well, when I finally got on staff and started being at the receiving end of some of that yelling and screaming, and then she moved on, and somebody a little more irrational came on to run the Scientology church in Santa Barbara, and that went okay for 8 years. It was up and down, and it was very stressful. I would say that the mood definitely changed to one of constant stress. Not particularly psychological trauma, and certainly no physical trauma yet, just a lot of stress. And then I joined the Sea Org, and the last 17 years of my, in my Scientology time as a Sea Org member was absolute hell. It was just take any, have you ever seen those movies? I make this comparison usually. Have you ever seen those movies about like call centers or boiler rooms where it's like, people are on the phones, they got to sell all the time, rack, and it's just like busy. That's what the Sea Org is like 24/7. Like there's not downtime in the Sea Org. There just isn't. And if there is, you're supposed to fill it with time, with work, right? You're not supposed to just be idle or just be slacking off. That's a big no-no. And people don't join the Sea Org in order to slack off. They join it because they expect a hardcore work ethic, but no one expects what actually the reality of it. And when you get in there and you adjust to that reality, it's a different reality. Let's put it that way. It's a whole different bubble world, So it's a long answer to your question, but I hope that gave some impression of the time periods.
No, I've if you read the Going Clear book, and of course if you watch the documentary, it mentions the Sea Org, and it's like they don't feed you hardly, and like they don't pay you shit. And they don't give you any time off, and you don't dare ask for any, and all kinds of
something
shit
like that. In the last 5 years that I was in the Sea Org, that's how many days off I had.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, full days. Right? And even then, you're on a leash because you have a pager or you have a cell phone, and or they sick an assassin cat on you and it follows you around, and and you're on a leash. So that's how that goes. So even a day off is not really a day off. There were plenty of days off that I had canceled halfway through the day and had to report back to duty.
I can't even imagine that. Were you in a relationship or married? Because I know married couples are fucked.
Yeah, and they are pretty fucked. I was married for 17 years. I got married within 3 months, actually, of arriving in the Sea Org. And I don't know if you know this or not, but that's because you can't have sex until you're married. No premarital sex in the Sea Org.
Oh, fuck that.
Right? No heavy petting in the Sea Org. Like, nothing, right? And so all you really get to do is kiss, right? And that's it. You don't want to be feeling her up. You don't want to be doing anything like that because you're going to get in a lot of trouble. People get in a lot of trouble for violating those rules. Like kind of the most trouble you can get in Scientology or in the Sea Org, right? For that. So so those rules are followed, but it's easy enough to get married. You just find somebody and you're like hanging out for a while, which is what I did. And we were hanging at night after post. We would stay up late and talk and then after 3 months, I was like, all right, I like her. She seems to like me. Let's do this, right? And I was 25 years old at the time. So and this was my third girlfriend in my life at this point. So I was not what you would call a well experienced 20s guy. I was pretty, I'd been living in this bubble world all this time, so I hadn't had a social life. And the woman that I married, who was also obviously a Sea Org member, she was 19 years old when I married her. So she was a Scientology second gen, had grown up in San Jose and had got recruited to be in the Sea Org and had come down to LA. And she'd only been in the Sea Org for about 6 months, 6 or 7 months at that point herself. So we hooked up, got married, and we stayed married all the way through. I divorced her after I left.
After the fact.
Well, you had to, because the divorce didn't happen while I was leaving, and there's a lot of paperwork to a divorce, and it wasn't possible for me to do it while I was leaving. Yeah, especially in Los Angeles, right? I don't know if you've ever done paperwork for LA County Courthouse, but Jesus fucking Christ, man.
That place just looks...
Yeah, because I didn't have the money for a lawyer. So I had to do it. It was roll your own divorce, baby. So that's how I did it,
Oh, Jesus. So I'm sure that was, stressful, I think, is probably an understatement. It almost feels like you could get PTSD from that shit or something. That sounds like you could really get like some major traumatic shit coming from that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's just the smallest of the bullshit that goes on in the Sea Org. Somebody's asking if I know my wife before I arrived in the Sea Org. I did not. I met her in the Sea Org.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. On YouTube, we have a couple of viewers here.
Well, how come I'm not seeing it? That's weird.
In the chat.
Oh, there it is. I didn't see it before.
Yeah.
Okay, I screwed up. All right, so it's the dork shop. I like that. The dork shop.
Hey, dork shop.
So I guess that would stress anybody's marriage. Is that why you got out of it, or just because it was time, or? Yeah,
the marriage tanked earlier, right? The marriage was over years before I left the Sea Org. I was actually out. I was sent out. Like full time. I was driving all over the United States doing logistics projects and helping people move and doing some stuff that was Sea Org related, Scientology related stuff. And so we were apart more than we were together for, like the last 4 years that I was in the Sea Org. I think I was around her for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We got another one for the dork shop. So, 0 to married in 3 months sounds like a lot like my Mormon
Mormon
heritage.
heritage, yeah.
Which is, like I said before, that kind of, I feel like that's kind of the same vein. I mean, because Mormonism started in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. And Scientology is like from the 40s, 50.
1953 is when the Church of Scientology first was officially incorporated.
Right. So I feel like this kind of this organic growth of religion right in front of our modern day eyes, I guess, kind of my lifetime is very well, not my lifetime, but within a generation from like 50, 60 years ago. It's
Yep.
fascinating to me. We can kind of track it, right? It's not
That's right.
some shit that happened 2,000 years ago where we have dusty old books where we worship people who are Bronze Age sheep herders.
Exactly. The thing that kind of blows me away is how critical everybody can be, or so many people can be, about modern day charlatans, right? Like L. Ron Hubbard, right? Or Jim Jones. I mean, if you look at it from a statistical perspective, very few people actually fall for this stuff, right? They fall for it, but then they get out. There's a sort of a revolving door aspect to cult membership. But these guys now, have a harder time. But we accept that some guy who was out of our purview, right? Like Joseph Smith or Muhammad or Christ or whatever, who we don't have their day-to-day breakdown of their life. Well, they're clearly holy men and prophets, and we should listen to every single word they ever said.
Yeah, I don't
Uncritically.
get that.
It doesn't make any sense to me at all. Because it seems to me that with modern, with being able to see day to day everything the person did in their life and see their college records and see their job records or whatever, their military records, you can see what the person was actually doing versus what they said. And you can see what a liar they were, but somehow we don't go, well, maybe some of these other guys were lying too.
Yeah, they don't make those kind of a cognitive bias.
No, they do not. Anyway.
So, after the Sea Org, how long were you in after that, or did you leave right after that?
Well, I left the Sea Org in December 2012 is when I finally was able to leave. And I was still a believer. I still wanted to do Scientology. And so I landed in Sacramento, stayed with my mom for about a month, got my feet on the ground, got a car, kind of got situated. And then I got a job out in Minnesota, which is where I'd been on project last. And I went out to Minnesota. And I started putting some roots down there and got a job with a Scientologist at the time. Was romantically involved with a Scientologist out there. And that was going. And then the church was giving me a real hard time because I was ex-Sea Org. And they didn't want me hanging around in parts where I had been hanging around before. But it didn't really make any sense. It was just, them being vindictive. And so they started making my life really difficult. And that's what put me on the path to driving down the internet rabbit hole and finding out what's what with Scientology. And that's when my eyes opened wide, you see.
Yeah.
And about halfway through 2013, I was done. I was totally done with Scientology. This is bullshit. I can't have anything to do with this. But here I am romantically involved with a Scientologist. Her whole family are Scientologists. I'm still connected with Scientologists. I can't just say, fuck all of you. That's not going to work. So I tried to figure out how to resolve this and also get over the fact that I was emotionally reeling from learning the truth. So I'm trying to orchestrate my life so I still get to keep the things that I love, but I've just been emotionally devastated, right? Like there are just not even words to describe how it feels to learn that 27 years of your life was total horseshit, right? There's just not any easy way to describe that. So, so I started speaking out anonymously, and the church figured out who I was, and I got busted. And by December 2013, I was declared a suppressive person.
Oh, SP, my
Yes.
favorites.
That's
Why
right.
don't you kind of say what a suppressive person is?
Suppressive person is Scientology's version of a boogeyman or a bad guy or an antisocial personality. It's an invention or construct of L. Ron Hubbard's from 1966, 67 area. 65, 66. And it's basically the scapegoat position or label that's used for disaffected Scientologists or people who have come to see that Scientology is not what it pretends to be, and they start speaking out against it, or they start fighting against it, or they start, saying, hey, this isn't right. Oh, okay, yeah, thank you for telling us that. Here, you're now a suppressive person. You are formally disconnected from all Scientologists, no matter what their relationship is to you, whether they are your children, whether they are your parents, whether they are your spouse, your business partner, your best friend of 40 years. Doesn't matter who they are. You no longer get to talk to them. They're not going to talk to you at all. You're out of their life. If you're married, you're getting divorced. If there are kids involved, they're going with the Scientologist, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, they do everything they can to ruin your life. And then once you're a suppressive person, and if you are speaking out against the church or publicly doing something about the church, then you are what is also called fair game.
Oh, yeah.
Which means that any Scientologist can come after you and do anything to you, and Scientology will not press any charges or do anything, even if you commit criminal acts against this SP. Scientology will actually support you in that because that individual is fair game. Anybody can shoot him and nobody's going to care because he's a bad guy, right? So that's the Scientology attitude about that.
Did you get the full-on treatment?
Not the full-on treatment.
No,
I do have a hate website against me up on the web right now. I've gotten trolling. I've gotten some nasty communications. I've had my life fucked with in various ways, but nothing like being physically stalked or harassed. That has not happened to me.
Okay.
I have not been stalked. No.
What about the shunning? Did your family completely shun you?
Well, my family had gotten out of Scientology before I did, thank God. So
okay.
I have my family, and that is something I am very, very, if blessed means anything, here is where it would apply, right? It's just pure luck that happened to happen, but they are out. And so I was not disconnected from my family, but that woman I was trying to be romantically entangled with, her whole family, friends I had for over 20 years, overnight, gone. Just gone. And that sucked. That really sucked. On top of the betrayal of 27 years of, hey, guess what? You've been, pushing bullshit on people. Now we're going to let you know that also you don't get to talk to any of your friends or family or any of these people. Well, again, not family, but for anybody else and for way too many people that I know, it is family. They have lost. I know so many people who to this day are still trying to reconnect with daughters, sons, mothers, and fathers. And it's sad. It is so sad because it's so needless and so stupid to break apart relationships like that because of criticism, because of a different belief. It's not even like, they're trying to destroy Scientology. They just want to see their family, and nope, you don't get that.
Well, I want to say one of the comments said the hate website is a high honor. That sounds like almost like you have to get that, like they have to say some shit about you, I guess. I mean,
yeah, they had it ready to go. It was interesting. The hate website went up, boom, the day.
They have a template, basically, I guess.
Well, I'm saying they had it ready to go on me, but they didn't pull the trigger for a couple years. It was interesting. I had my YouTube channel and it was going and growing and growing and growing. And then the day after I appeared on Scientology in the Aftermath on TV with Leah.
Oh, you were on there.
Yes, I was on that show twice. I was on the show.
That's tough. I was watching it for a while, and I kind of go find your ass. Okay.
I was in season 1, and I was in the final episode of season 3. I got to stand up and talk there. So.
Okay, maybe I did see you in season 1. That's why you look familiar. Okay.
Yeah, possibly. It was a very short appearance. I was only on for about 10 minutes, but it was fun. They flew me out to LA. I got to talk to Mike and Leah, and yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, of course, the celebrity thing is a whole different deal.
Yep.
The celebrity, they get like more leeway. Like fucking Tom Cruise is like a demigod or some shit like that.
Oh yeah. Well, Tom Cruise is such a goddamn narcissist, and he, I mean, pardon my French. I know I'm, swearing and stuff, but I really can't stand Tom Cruise. He really, personally, he's just really. Just
is he as bad as he seems? Because he seems like a dick.
Yeah. No, he is. He is that bad. He's actually got, though. See, the thing about him that is so amazing is he fools everyone. Or almost everyone. I mean, he fools so many people. Certainly the people that matter, the people around him, are absolutely fooled. And it's amazing. One for one, he just pulls it off, But, he is what he is. He's not a good guy. And the things they said in Going Clear were true. Those were true statements that were being made. I know those people. I can vouch for what they were saying. So he does not deserve all the accolades and wonderfulness and all that he gets. He's a scumbag.
Yeah, I get mad at these directors. He keeps getting the same, like Steven Spielberg seems to love him because he keeps getting roles.
I know. Well, like I said, he's got a really good stage performance, right? His private life isn't really private for him because he still has to put on a show. It's his private life that where he goes into the Scientology world, and you got to see that in the turtleneck video. That got leaked. You saw that, right?
Did I see that? I can't remember.
It's the famous Tom Cruise video where he's sitting there talking about Scientology.
Yeah.
Right? It was huge. I think it was released in 2004 or something. I don't remember when it came out, or 6. I was otherwise occupied in the Sea Org at the time. I was not aware of this video. I was not aware of what happened on the internet. I didn't know about any of this stuff. We didn't know about the Oprah couch jumping, none of that stuff, right? And within, by the way, did you ever see the Tom Cruise clip where he rips into Matt Lauer on the Today Show?
Yeah. I don't remember what it was about.
It was about Brooke Shields, and it was about psychiatry.
Yeah, she was taking the medication.
That's right. And Tom Cruise starts literally lecturing Matt Lauer on air about how he's an expert on psychiatry and Matt isn't, and Matt needs to shut up and listen. And I mean, it was kind of horrifying. We saw that clip in the church. We were shown that on video at a briefing. And we cheered. We thought Tom Cruise was just the best thing ever, right? Like, that just kind of shows you how much the mindset can change, But that's the real Tom Cruise. What you saw there, that when he was ripping into Matt Lauer, when he was talking in that turtleneck video, and that's when his guard is actually down as much as it's ever going to be, because he's talking to Scientologists, who are people he thinks he's connected with in a way that he could never be as well connected with his fan base or the public at large. So that video, the turtleneck video, that is Tom Cruise. And that's not a good guy. That the person in that video is a narcissistic asshole.
Well, I feel sorry for his ex-wife. And he has a kid. The kid he has...
Suri. Yeah.
That's what I feel sorry.
I'm happy that Suri doesn't see him. He's not a good influence in her life.
Oh,
I'm happy that that's the situation. He doesn't see his own kid because the church has kind of put the kibosh on that because of Katie. Because Katie didn't just leave Scientology; she escaped Tom Cruise's life in the most dramatic possible way. I mean, she had security guards and stuff helping her and her family, and it was all this covert operation to get her and her kid the hell away from Tom Cruise. And I don't get why the public at large, I mean, Katie was pretty tight-lipped about the whole thing, I think probably because of legal reasons. I think she's probably signed about, contracts about that thick in order to marry Tom Cruise and never be able to say a word about it, one way or the other publicly, because she doesn't really talk about it much. But she escaped. She didn't just divorce Tom Cruise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of a maybe something's up with the real Tom Cruise, you know? Like,
Yeah, I don't know why he doesn't. Well, I do know why he doesn't get more blowback from that.
I don't either. I don't understand it, except that except to understand cults.
Yeah.
And just, you know, there's destructive cults like Scientology and Mormons and, you know, these kind of things. And then there's just cults, you know, celebrity cults, cults of personality, um, cults of popularity, let's call them that rather than personality. But like Tom Cruise's popularity cult out there, right? And they're a lesser grade version of a destructive cult. So you see the same phenomena, you just don't see it amped up as high. And one of the primary characteristics of a cult is that the cult members, the followers, will give the leader a pass 24/7. Just Teflon. The guy or girl, the man or woman, whoever is the cult leader, they can do no wrong.
It sounds like a certain president I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done whole episodes about that.
So that's where like maybe the cult of his fame intersects with like the Scientology cult, maybe. Like
Yep.
he's got kind of the double-barreled immunity almost, you know.
Yeah, it's a thing, and celebrities get a pass all the time on stuff that they absolutely should not be getting a pass on. Look at all. I mean, if you Google just some of the crimes that you know that happen that celebrities commit. I mean, everything from assault, battery to drunk driving, sexual assault to murder, hit and run. Celebrities get a pass on a lot of this stuff where regular people get thrown in jail, you know?
Well, I'm showing this comment up here on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Katie
Yep.
saw the writing on the wall with how Nicole Kidman was treated, and actually, I don't know how she was treated. How was she treated? And you don't hear much about Nicole Kidman. I mean, she's with Keith Urban now, and she's just
Yep.
kind of.
Well, I think she also probably signed a sheaf of contracts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she's just not, you know, she's not going to talk about it. And frankly, I'm probably pretty sure that both of these women also aren't going to talk about it because let's be really, really clear that Tom Cruise, as crazy and nutty as he is, also wields a tremendous amount of power in Hollywood and is not shy about using it. Mark Headley and I had a whole conversation. He's a former Sea Org member who actually met Tom Cruise while in the course of being a Sea Org member. And he told a whole story about how Tom Cruise pulled in all of the celebrities, the Scientology celebrities in the LA or California area to a meeting and basically read them the riot act. This was in 2003, 4, 5 time period when he was going on this whole gung-ho roll about, you know, being such a ardent Scientologist. He called this meeting and he literally threatened every one of their careers. He said, you get on board with Scientology and you start promoting it or your career is going to be over. I will see to it personally. That's Tom Cruise. So, you know, I'm pretty sure Nicole and Katie both are fully aware of the level of vindictiveness that Tom Cruise has and the power he wields in Hollywood. So, you know, it makes sense that they're not making a big stink. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that, but I get it.
No, yeah, and it's if we know anything, especially after the revelation of the Me Too movement, Weinstein, whatever, and all the shit he did to all those women and the kind of shit he went through to try to keep things secret. Is anybody really surprised that powerful men are controlling things in Hollywood? Come on, no.
Exactly. And, you know, and that's the power and influence and that comes with that level of status. Tom Cruise is able to make a lot of money for a lot of people every single time he produces a movie. So there's a lot of vested interest in keeping Tom Cruise happy. So Tom Cruise will keep making movies and making lots of money for lots and lots of people. I mean, this is not really rocket science as to how this influence works, you know. But it's morally, on a moral compass, this all is as deep south as it gets. But this is the world we live in, you know.
So we got a couple of comments. First of all, Catherine says, "Cool, thanks for having Chris on. They love you." They love
Hey,
you guys.
Catherine. Thanks for coming around.
And the Dork Shop's back, but did you read any L. Ron Hubbard's sci? Would they even let you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, for sure.
Oh,
L. Ron
really?
Hubbard's work was a-okay,
Oh
man.
yeah, of course that
There's
makes sense.
there's a whole branch of the Church of Scientology. Well, okay. There's a whole branch of the operation of the Church of Scientology, not the official corporate Church of Scientology. There's another corporation called Author Services Inc. And that organization is manned by Sea Org members, and it operates as L. Ron Hubbard's literary agent. So they deal with all of his fiction works, and there's a huge body of stories that L. Ron Hubbard wrote as a pulp fiction author and writer, all the way up to the 1980s. So they deal with all of that fiction. The Sea Org and Scientology does not deal with any of L. Ron Hubbard's personal estate that way. And Author Services, as its own organization, reproduces L. Ron Hubbard's books and lectures, or not lectures, but his books on audiobook form. They produce dramatic reenactments of his books as audio plays, as well as produce the books themselves, get them published, and get them sold. So that whole operation is going at the same time that Scientology is going, and the glue that joins these two things together is the Sea Organization. And so we were encouraged as Sea Org members to listen to these audiobooks or read L. Ron Hubbard's fiction in our off time. But some people figured that out. I personally hated L. Ron Hubbard's pulp fiction as a literate writer myself, and somebody who was writing stories at a young age. I fancied myself a writer, and I wrote a lot as a kid and as a teen before I got into Scientology. And I just ruthlessly critiqued L. Ron Hubbard's stories while I was reading them, and I couldn't read them because they were so bad.
It's garbage.
And that was as a Sea Org member, right? I still thought that. I mean, I did have enough we had enough freedom of thought to think that much, but I didn't run around talking about it. I felt very,
No, hell no.
I can't tell anybody this, but I really hate this crap, So I did enjoy Mission Earth, or sorry, not Mission Earth, Battlefield Earth, the
Oh,
book.
you like that?
The book. I liked the book. I liked the book.
Okay. I remember reading that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Then again,
but then
I was 20, so.
then I came to my senses. Anyway, the thing that bothers me about the book now is the Scientology influence in it. It's rife with Scientology all throughout the book, and then the other thing that I liked that he had done was a story called Final Blackout, and that's from the 40s. And I'd have to read that again because I read it when I was last in the Sea Org, so I don't know if I'd still maintain my position about that one.
I want to.
Yeah.
My best friend in grade school lost his grandma to disconnection, so I've been morbidly fascinated since. My other best friend growing up is Mormon. Lots of Mormon experiences going on.
Yeah.
And then, of course, she says the books suck. Actually, well, not literally. She said that leaves quite a bit to be desired, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I just said
agreed.
they suck.
Well, what sucks really harder than anything else in Hubbard's works? I mean, the plot structures are pretty thin and stereotypical, but his characters are complete stereotypes. But the dialogue, oh my God, it's so bad. It's like painfully bad. There were some scientist types who were writing science fiction back in the pulp fiction days. Like real scientists. And man, some of them could figure out how to write dialogue, but most of them it was awful. And Hubbard was one of those awful ones.
Yeah, because he used to hang around with like Heinlein and Asimov and all those guys or whatever.
That's right.
And if you read any of those, of course, they're white dudes in the 40s. Of course,
well, that's who was writing the stories
fucking,
at that time,
a bunch of misogynistic shit. I mean, at least they were better writers. Like Heinlein was a pretty good writer. I enjoyed reading him. Asimov, he was pretty straightforward. He didn't really have any thrills, but he still had good stories.
Yeah.
But I know
Ray Bradbury,
even though he's
Arthur C. Clarke.
Oh,
You know?
yes, Arthur C. Clarke. Yes,
Yeah, these
of
guys
course.
were just amazing. Ray
Them also.
Bradbury, especially, was the most human of them, I thought. But all of them came out of that Pulp Fiction era, and they were all legit Pulp Fiction writers, and some of them were better than others, you know. But Hubbard was, I just could never deal with his dialogue. Ugh. Yeah, Bradbury.
I didn't. He got on my bad side when Fahrenheit 9/11 came out. He was bitching about it
Who
because
was bitching about Fahrenheit 9/11?
Ray Bradbury, because Fahrenheit, it was a takeoff of Fahrenheit 4. I'm like, calm down, old man. Okay, boomer.
Wow. Well, being in between, I will say that I'll side with Bradbury on that one, but that's just because I'm not a big Michael Moore fan either.
I just thought it was kind of petty, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. So, there's a couple. I know we're kind of going in reverse order because I really should have asked you this in the beginning.
Sure.
But I wanted to get your personal story out first because I thought that was more important. But there's a couple, like for example, the whole origin story, right, of Scientology. Like the idea. Can you just like if there's a South Park episode where they go through this, and this is what they really believe is what it says down at the bottom. And it's just so fucking crazy to me.
The Xenu story?
Yeah, the Xenu.
All right. Well, first off, let's be clear that Xenu is not the origin story of Scientology. And I'm just going to correct you on that because you're not the only person I've ever heard say it.
Okay.
And Xenu is a middle story in a long story that goes back 4 quadrillion years. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah.
Sorry.
It's like that. 4 quadrillion years.
It's like not even a real number. I mean, it is, but it's like just making up numbers.
Yeah, no. Oh, the numbers in Scientology get huge.
4 quadrillion.
Yes. Because, well, you have to understand that the reason why is because L. Ron Hubbard, who, by the way, primarily was lecturing about this stuff in the 1950s and 60s. Where he totally unaware himself of astronomy, astrophysics, how any of this stuff works at all. Like he just made stuff up. And what he claimed to Scientologists, what he told them in the 1950s and 60s is that science had it all wrong. That carbon dating was totally wrong. And that it was based on how much carbon there was in the universe when the universe was formed. And he said, but they guessed wrong and they got it wrong. And the universe is actually much older than anybody thinks it is. And that's how he got away with Scientologists of coming up with these gigantic numbers that modern, astrophysics says, yeah, no, that's not how old any of this stuff is. Scientologists think otherwise. So,
4 quadrillion.
Yeah, so Xenu only happened 75 million years ago.
Oh, that's more reasonable.
So that's only a drop in the bucket compared to 4 quadrillion years, which, by the way, is not how old you are. It is how long you have been here in this physical universe. And that's as close to an origin story as we get in Scientology, is that 4 quadrillion years. And you also do learn this, by the way, on OT3. There's 2 parts to OT3. And the Xenu story is one part. This other part is a shorter part of that same level, where you find out that it was 4 quadrillion years ago that we all entered the physical universe as we know it. There's an implication there that maybe we were somewhere else before, but I don't know any place that Hubbard elaborates on that in any way.
Okay. Well, then let's just tell the Xenu story that most people know.
Yeah, the Xenu story. Oh, God.
It's fun.
Oh, it's so stupid. Okay. The way the story basically goes, and I wrote a whole chapter in my book just about this stuff, and not just about Xenu, but actually explaining why Xenu was actually just this much of the story. And I'm not going to tell the whole story tonight, but the basics of this are that The reason that the context of this story is kind of important to understanding why Scientologists would want to know anything about it in the first place. It's not just a fable that Scientologists are told. It's a small part of the level of OT3. And the important part about the Xenu story isn't Xenu, it's the body thetans. And we'll get to that. So Xenu was a galactic overlord who ruled over the 13 planets of this sector of the universe, or our galaxy here. And Xenu was the head of this galactic confederation, which I believe was also called the Markab Confederacy. It's possible that I'm putting two things together that are not the same thing, but it's a little hard to tell in Hubbard's cosmology. So I feel safe in mentioning that, right? Because he talks about Markab all over the place. Oh yeah, Dorkshop's asking, how did Hubbard claim to have this knowledge? He claimed to recall it in auditing sessions that he did on himself. He took himself into a room with an e-meter that he had rigged up so that he could operate it by himself, on himself. This is called solo auditing in Scientology. Scientologists get trained how to do this. And Hubbard did it, and this is how he did his research and development. He did it behind an e-meter, imagining what his past was and what the collective past of all of us was, and he put that into these OT levels. That's what they're all about. Is Hubbard's mapping the way through his research, right? And we all believed that Hubbard had some special research methodology, and he was this really brilliant genius guy, and he really had all this stuff figured out. I mean, you know how it is. You can rationalize anything if you believe hard enough, and we believed. So, okay, so the context here is that you've gotten to OT3, and you are now there to gain the secret of why it is. This is how it's marketed in Scientology. Why is it that we have war? Why is it that we have criminality? Why is this world so crazy? Why do we tear each other's throats out all the time? Like, what's up with people? Why is this planet in such turmoil, and why does it seem like our societies and civilizations are constantly struggling and constantly tearing themselves apart? Hubbard's original answer to this question was this thing called the reactive mind that I mentioned earlier, right? It's this part of your mind that has all your accumulated stress and trauma. Well, that only goes up to the level of clear, and by the level of clear, you're supposed to not have that reactive mind anymore. It's supposed to be gone. And yet, even if we made the entire world clear, we'd still have these problems and issues. And that's because there's another factor that's preying on you that you don't know anything about. And that thing that is preying on you is actually a conglomeration of things. And those things are spiritual entities, which are called body thetans.
Yay, thetans.
Right? This is the big reveal of OT3. Is that this is happening to you right now. This is why Scientologists care about it. The Xenu thing is only the explanation for why this is happening to you, but the important thing is that it is happening to you right now. And these body thetans are all over you. They literally constitute your body, which doesn't make any fucking sense, by the way, but I just say that because Hubbard said it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, because the thing is, you do these levels, and you're supposed to be telepathically contacting each one of these body thetans and releasing them, right? Rehabilitating them and sending them on their way.
No, totally legit, totally legit.
And if these things made up your body, then by the time you were done, you wouldn't have a body anymore. So that really doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But this is what Hubbard says. He says they make up your body. And this is what I'm telling you right now is from the viewpoint of a person who is climbing the OT levels as a Scientologist. They have paid, by the way, at least $200,000 to get to the place where they are now, right? It's inconceivable to me that somebody could get to OT3 without paying at least $100,000, but definitely average way more than that. That would be bare minimum, right? It's variable for each person. But anyway, you've invested all this money. You've invested years of your life. Nobody gets to OT3 in a couple months. It takes years. So you've done all this work. You've made all these sacrifices. You have taken out the mortgage. You have cashed in your kids' college fund. You've done whatever they asked you to do so you could get to this level and learn why it is that the world is the way that it is and what you can do personally to change it, to actually change the world. That's a big idea. It's kind of a big responsibility, and yet Scientologists take this on because they really think that their actions matter that much. It's delusional. It is conceited. It is arrogant. But that's what life is like in cults. You know, they're a pretty arrogant, conceited lot of people because they're all hyped up on themselves and what the cult leader has told them. So the Xenu story, the origin story of these body thetans, how they became body thetans and not flitting free thetans like you and me who can fly around and own bodies, is Xenu, this galactic overlord guy, was trying to solve overpopulation amongst these 13 planets. Somehow, as somebody pointed out to me recently, it didn't occur to Xenu or anybody else that perhaps they could expand into the rest of the infinite galaxy, right? No, we're not going to do that. No. We're not gonna bring in any more habitable planets. We're not gonna go explore anything. We're not gonna do anything sensible like that. No. I got a better idea, Xenu says. What we're gonna do is we're gonna get a bunch of spaceships that look just like DC-10s, and we're going to bring everybody in for tax audits. And everybody's got to report, and we're gonna knock them out with this mixture of alcohol and glycol, which somehow is supposed to knock out a thetan, even though a thetan is a spiritual entity that really doesn't exist in the physical universe. But we won't ask any questions about any of this, right? Somehow these guys get knocked out, packed up in ice cubes. They get frozen, right?
God damn it. I can't.
Packed up in these planes by the bucket load. And there must have been, if you think about this, right, with the billions and billions of people on these 13 planets, there must have been hundreds of thousands, millions of DC-10s to transport all these people's bodies around, right? Because all this was supposed to have only taken place over maybe a year or two period of time. Okay, right? The logistics of this alone defy all reality, but we'll just go with it, right? That okay, Hubbard called them. Xenu called them all in, knocked them out, stuck them in the planes. His army, I guess, was loyal to him and carried out his wishes here. And they all get shipped to Earth. Only Earth is known as Tigiak at that time. He then. Terraform new planets? Nah. So Xenu then sees to it that all of these people that have been dumped by the bucket load, by the billions onto Earth, are annihilated in atomic flames by exploding atomic weapons inside volcanoes. I guess in Hubbard's mind, exploding them in volcanoes made that more interesting or earthquake-like or planetarily orgasmic or something. I'm not sure what the thinking was with the volcanoes, but he was very clear about the fact that volcanoes is where the bombs were exploded, and somehow this, really made things 10 times worse. Whatever, right? I don't even get it. And then all these bodies that these thetans were occupying, all these billions and billions of bodies, were annihilated in one go. Just boom, gone. Yet the thetans, the spirits, were trapped on the planet. They were stuck to the planet by these electronic ribbons of something in the air that were keeping them stuck on the planet, because thetans can respond and be contained by certain electronic flows, according to L. Ron Hubbard. Again, he did not specify the variance or frequency or wattage or voltage or anything of what these electronics were. He just said they hadn't yet been invented on Earth. Super convenient, dude.
Yeah, really.
So this is how thetans are controlled, right? So somehow all these billions of thetans are now bodiless and trapped on planet Earth. And there's and that's not even all of it. Then facilities have somehow been created, despite all this atomic nonsense, to take all of these billions of thetans and run them through this implant station over the course of about 3 or 4 days, if I remember right. It might have been 3 or 4 weeks, but over a fairly short period of time, all of these thetans are presented with a sound and light show to convince them that they did not experience what they just experienced, to basically implant in them or hypnotize them and make them mind-numb zombies, that nothing that just happened to them actually happened, and if they ever try to remember any of it, they're going to die. And this is where the concepts of religion, aging, body aging, because bodies lasted almost forever before this, sex as a mechanism of reproduction and obsession got entered into everybody's heads, and everybody was implanted, okay, with these weird, crazy ideas, and then they were just left there. And Hubbard doesn't really say a whole lot more about what happened after they were left there. Now, the body thetans come in because not everybody survived this whole nuclear fire and implant process the same way. Some thetans, in fact, most thetans, many of them, just completely caved and folded and freaked out and introverted to a degree that I don't know is comparable with anything that we would understand as introversion here with our brains and bodies. But the idea of a body thetan is he's basically practically mind-numb, zombified as a thetan. He's just out of it completely. Most of the time he's asleep or unconscious. He's just not aware of anything. And he's just kind of stuck there. And they cluster together for some reason. Hubbard wasn't exactly clear why in simple terms that would make any sense, but he said that they would cluster together. The basis of the clustering being the fact that they all experienced the exact same horrifyingly traumatic, awful episode. And it would have to be something on the order of, sitting in the middle of a supernova while it's exploding or something, in terms of what would create stress or trauma for a spiritual entity, right? Like, not a lot. You're not gonna, hit him with a pinprick or show a cross to him or something and he's gonna freak out. It takes a lot of energy to impinge on a thetan in any way. So this whole Xenu incident was supposed to basically be constructed to get across the idea that this is how much force it takes to knock a thetan out for an extended period of time. And most of the thetans who were involved in this incident were knocked out all the way to now. They're still knocked out. And they're glommed onto you. And sometimes, and they're glommed onto you like by the thousands. There's thousands of them. And sometimes they wake up. 1 or 2 or 3 of them will wake up from time to time and pop up and look around and throw a thought out or remember something or have something to say about something before they go back to sleep. And you stupid idiot, you don't know that is somebody else. You think it's your thought. Because all you're hearing is this telepathic, hey, I'm feeling great today, or everything sucks, or you're an idiot, or I'm a fool, or whatever it is that the thetan thinks, the body thetan thinks. You think you're the one who thought that. And you're getting this input all day long. And it's kind of like if you were being followed around by a closet full of crazy people all day. And that's what life is like for most people on planet Earth. because we talk to ourselves, we hear voices, we hear music, we hear all these things. Hubbard said all of that is these things. And when you get rid of them and they are no longer attached to you in any way and they have flitted off to be thetans themselves again as rehabilitated thetans, you have not only done a service for them by rehabilitating them and letting them go on their way, but you are also clearing all of this junk off of you that is that is unconsciously or subconsciously affecting your own thought processes. So the reason people buy into the Xenu narrative, I have to give this whole explanation, but the reason Scientologists buy into it is because it's a fairly silly and yet simple enough story that they can kind of go, okay, I get that that's where all of these things could have come from. I get it. Okay, whatever. That's kind of about how much importance is placed on it by most Scientologists doing the level. What they really want to do is get to what do they have to do to get through the level and get on up to the highest OT levels so that they can attain total spiritual freedom and be free of this entire planet and its prison-like structure, and be a way to go create their own planets or go to Kolob or go to wherever they want to go or do whatever they want to do. That's kind of where Scientologists' heads are at when they're going up the bridge. And this is why even for OT Scientologists who know all about Xenu, when they hear about it on South Park or they hear about it in the news or the media, they are able to just go, you people are a bunch of idiots. None of you have any idea what you're talking about. You don't. The Xenu thing is not anywhere near as important as all of you people are making it out to be, and you don't know anything about what Scientology really is. And that's how they're able to keep in the mindset. And that entire explanation I gave you is one part of why.
Well, Catherine says, because actually trying to understand that narrative is completely exhausting, and obviously you just demonstrated that point.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, that's the same
who wants
thing.
to think too much about that shit? You know what I mean?
Nobody, they don't want you to read the Bible, right? Nobody actually reads the whole thing.
No. And this is all presented to you on a piece of paper. It's like 2 or 3 pieces of paper. That's it. It's all there. That's everything you get.
Yeah, that's great. That's
you go, better. Okay, all right. Sure. I mean, and let's be clear. Nobody does the level without a lot of build up to it. There is nothing else in Scientology that is built up as much as OT3. So it is expected. Scientologists do expect to have their mind blown. They expect to get some news that's going to make red look blue. I mean, they really expect for everything to be, there's a before OT3 and there's an after OT3 to your life. And they are not the same lives anymore. That's the expectation. You understand?
Yeah.
So there's all this build up to it. So when they get the piece of paper and they finally start reading it and they start figuring it out, and the supervisor is right there to help them if they have any questions, like, wait a minute, what? Yeah, let me show you this. Let me show you that. They got all these encyclopedias and reference books and everything all ready to answer every single question that could possibly come up with any of this stuff. Because they've been doing this stuff for years. I mean, this has been going on since 1967. So they're pretty grooved into how to deal with any questions people are going to have when they hit this level. And they're specifically trained to do that, right? I never did that job. I did do the job of course supervising. So I dealt with all kinds of questions people had in Scientology over all the years that I was in it and helped people clarify stuff. But this is a whole nother level. I can't figure out, knowing everything I know right now about Scientology and about people, I don't know how you do that job of explaining and making that narrative make any sense. Because when I read it as the final nail in the coffin of Scientology, when I finally opened that document and read it on the internet, I was furious. My reaction to reading it was one of being angry because it doesn't make any sense. It's not logically coherent. It doesn't jive with the rest of Scientology in some kind of important ways. And it's just idiotically stupid. Like, it doesn't explain anything. It doesn't explain why, certain other things about life happen. It doesn't explain, anyway, it just doesn't explain a lot of things Hubbard says it will. And so my reaction was, what the, I was pissed. I had spent 27 years of my life thinking that this was the secret that was going to blow away everything. So, yeah.
So you're that guy, because every time
I'm that guy. If I was in the classroom, I would have been like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? What about this? What about this? What about this? But I also have to admit that I would have only taken that shit so far, because as a cult member, you are constantly aware of the fact that there is always right outside your vision, sort of in your blind spot, if you will, a threat. There's always a hammer a little bit over your head. And that is especially true when you are in the Sea Org, which is where I spent 17 years. So, a good chunk of my time was in that outfit. So I developed you develop this sort of sixth sense for when you're pushing too hard, and you learn when to pull back, because there are some areas that you start pushing on and you start immediately getting a bad reaction back from your fellow cult members, and you've entered territory. You got to pull back. You got to not go there. And this would be one of those cases, I think.
Well, don't they audit you if you get kind of too crazy or whatever?
Oh yeah, they do. Like I'm just saying it's the sec checking that they will give you, the interrogatories, right? That costs money, and that takes time, and you're in trouble, and you're looked down upon, and you're a troublemaker, and you don't want to be that guy. Who wants to be that guy, right? There's already peer pressure in any group you're involved in to conform. That's the whole point of being in a group. So if you start pushing boundaries, though, this is when it becomes clear whether you're in a cult or not, is how they react to this kind of stuff. And, in an open group, you can ask as many questions as you want. Nobody's freaking out. In Scientology or similar groups, you start asking too many questions, and people are going to start wondering about you, and they're going to show you the door, or they're going to start treating you more harshly. And that's, it just is what it is. So.
We got another question from Catherine here.
Yeah.
Is it correct you have to be OT3 as daughter or CS to take a public?
Yes. Yep. OT 1, 2, and 3 are solo audited. So you audit yourself on them. The person you're reporting to is definitely already done through OT3. The course supervisor that supervises you on the materials is definitely already OT3. Everybody you're going to deal with everywhere along the line is already OT3, and they service you. And it's the same for all the levels basically on up. Same with 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. You can't deliver the level if you haven't first been basically exposed to it, is the general rule.
Let's talk about money.
Sure.
Because one of the, I didn't really mention that, but I mean, that kind of underlies a lot of money. The amount of money it takes to fucking get all this shit is insane to me.
Yeah.
I mean, just like these textbooks cost and you have to get them. Mm-hmm. They will not let you do unless you have to have these books, and they're exorbitantly expensive. And like you said, they tell you to take out credit cards, put a mortgage on your house, cash out your 401k, wherever the fuck.
That's right. Wherever you can get money. Maybe we should have set this at the get-go. You always don't know how to start these things, but let's be real super clear. Talking about Scientology and the theory of Scientology and the philosophy of Scientology and stuff, I can talk about this stuff for hours. It's really not a problem, but let's be super clear that all I'm doing is telling you all the window dressing. Scientology it's a destructive cult, but at its most basic level, Scientology is a money-making scam. And it's only using religious cloaking to its advantage to gain tax exemption and protection in the courts.
Oh, yeah. And I guess I should have started out with that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Disclaimer. Spoiler alert, it's all about the money.
And it is all about the money. At the end of the day, that's all it's about. And every single person in Scientology somehow contributes to this cash cow that benefits one guy. That's it. It's the whole pattern is set up to benefit one man. At first, that man was L. Ron Hubbard. Now it's David Miscavige.
Oh, that fucking guy.
Yeah.
Oh, oh God, he's the evil.
Yep.
Let me, and Catherine has another.
Mm.
How many times did you have to buy a new? Yeah, that's another thing.
1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times.
Jesus.
In the time that I was involved.
And I thought
they had 4 new additions. They have redone that bridge 4 times.
And I was pissed off when I had to buy Aqualung 5 times because they keep remastering it.
Nope, 4 times. And we're talking full redos, you know, not just changing the covers out, but actually changing the text and stuff where it was required that you have to buy the new materials. And it's always on you. Always on you, to spend the money. You never get a break. You know, there's no discounts. I mean, there's, you know, discounts and specials and sliding scale, all the nonsense that you get in any sort of sales organization. All those tricks are there. But at the end of the day, it's about your money, and it really isn't about anything else.
I heard, like, if you get, not disfellowship, but you disconnected, that they basically try to sue you for all the money they spent on you when you were in the.
No, not exactly true. What you're probably talking about is the freeloader's debt.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, that is when you sign a staff contract or a Sea Org contract, and you're going to work for the Church of Scientology, which is what I did for 25 years.
That's what. Yeah.
You're going to get all of your services for free. You're going to get free auditing. You're going to get free training, right? Not just on the job training or training for the job you're doing, but all the bridge, the whole thing. It's all free. The trick is finding the time to do it, and for the auditing, finding an auditor who will audit you, because there aren't a lot of them and time is scarce. But this is how you can get up the bridge as a Scientologist. Or as a staff member, and this is how I went clear. And I did a boatload of training as a staff member and as a Sea Org member. If you break your contract before it's over, you are obligated to pay the church back for the services you received on that contract. So for staff members at city level churches, like the one in Boston or Denver or Milano, they sign contracts either of 2.5 years or 5 years of commitment to that church, and they're going to work for that church. During that time, they do their training, they get their services for free, and they do their job as a staff member. That's the idea. Most of the time, the only part of that actually gets fulfilled is doing their job as a staff member. But sometimes they get some training, and sometimes if they're really lucky, like I was, an auditor will come along who will audit them through a bunch of stuff. So if you leave, then they're going to tell you they want the money for the services you took because you didn't finish your contract. You didn't uphold your end of the deal, so we're not going to uphold ours, is basically the tit for tat on that. They don't sue you. This is not a legal claim. They are under no obligation under any legal jurisdiction to pay this debt back. However, if you ever want to do Scientology again, you got to pay the debt first, right? They're not going to, and sometimes they'll reduce it a little bit, or there'll be specials that you can get discounts again, stuff like that. But you got to pay that debt before you will be able to do any Scientology services again. And for example, when I left the Sea Org, before I was declared a suppressive in that time period, I had a freeloader's debt of a few $1,000s, and I actually took out a loan and I actually paid it because I wanted to show I was a good Scientologist in good standing, and I was a good guy, and I was with it as a, you know, and all of that before I learned the horrible, awful truth of it all. So, yeah.
So what about the 10,000 year contract or whatever?
You mean the billion-year contract?
Billion. Yeah, that one.
That's the Sea Org contract.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I signed one of those.
What does it actually say, though?
Let's see. Staff member, Sea Org member dies. Do they charge their Scientologist family members for it? No, they're not going to. They're not going to do that. Let me see if I can find it here because I
I
will.
didn't see that.
Sea Org contract Scientology.
Weird question, but if staff member or Sea Org member dies, do they change? Oh yeah, it's not carried.
Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, I do. Where is it? Here it is. I blank do hereby agree to enter into employment with the Sea Organization and, being of sound mind, do fully realize and agree to abide by its purpose, which is to get ethics in on the planet and the universe, and fully and without reservation subscribe to the discipline, mores, and conditions of this group and pledge to abide by them. Therefore, I contract myself to the Sea Organization for the next 1 billion years. That's it.
Billion, y'all.
Billion. Yeah, it's the ultimate commitment, you know.
Well, what's the difference between that and what you just said, the 2.5 year, the 5 year commitment? Is that just?
Oh yeah, well clearly the 2.5 or 5 year is a realistic, thing.
Well, I know,
but the 1 billion years, it's in your mind. Okay, I can only tell you what that meant to me in my mind, of course, and what I communicated to others about it, because I did recruit other people into the Sea Org and I got them to sign that contract. And Scientology's, sound mind, huh? Scientology's PR line with this is it's a symbolic commitment. I didn't take it that way, and most Sea Org members don't. You basically are sold on the idea of Scientology so hard and so well, and are so convinced that it is truly the only thing that is going to change conditions in the society and change the world. That's where your head's at. And you then are told, look, man, you're going to do this for the rest of your life, and what else are you going to do? Next life and life and life after that. If we haven't gotten this job done, what else is there to do? Right? I mean, you're on board here, man. We're Scientology. Okay. We are making the world a better place. We are going to salvage this entire universe. You think that's going to happen in a lifetime or two? We got Earth is only the first planet. We got tons of work to do out there. So, 1 billion years actually seems like a drop in the bucket, especially if you've been around for 4 quadrillion years.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Drop in the bucket. So
I still can't wrap my mind around that. 4 quadrillion. Okay, well, I think we've hit on the
we hit on some of the good stuff for you.
The Xenu and the 1 billion year contract and suppressant persons and all that good stuff. Yeah. Although I did want to mention briefly David Miscavige.
Yes.
He seems like just this fucking evil temper tantrum man. He sounds horrible.
He is. He's probably one of the most intense people I've ever met. I have been briefed by him in a room full of people where he was briefing all of us at once. And he commands respect. He commands attention. He is not to be trifled with. It is very clear that he is the one who is in charge, and no one in Scientology would just no one questions him. It's just not how it is. He is the epitome of Scientology and Scientologists to Scientology. So, and they see him as a great guy. I mean, again, it's a lot like Tom Cruise. It's a lot like Tom Cruise's base. That's celebrity kind of thing, right? Yeah. David Miscavige is a celebrity in the world of Scientology. He is the leader. He is the ecclesiastical, flag bearer. But he's also a celebrity. Everybody admires him and thinks he's like the bee's knees. When he comes around in the Sea Org, you're freaked out, though. I mean, you don't want him checking out your space. You don't want him messing with you. You don't want him in your area because he's going to root out your secrets and, he's going to find out what you've been up to and all that. It's, it's kind of like, I don't know, Cinder Claws or something, So but you don't, when I was a Sea Org member, my mindset was not in a place where I was thinking critically about how I was feeling internally about my visceral reactions to David Miscavige. I didn't think to myself, this is fear. This is terror. This is anxiety. I thought to myself through my lens of refiltering everything through Scientology must be good, and David Miscavige must be a great leader. When that filter is in place, and then fear becomes respect. Anxiety becomes nervousness about meeting the great leader. That kind of thing. You're able to change your view about how you're feeling. But in looking back on it, it's crystal clear to me that I was suffering from anxiety, a lot of stress when he was around, and and PTSD after the whole experience. Not just him, but the entire Sea Org experience. So, and he's not he's not a good man.
No, he sounds angry. He's got some anger issues. Whatever.
Yeah, he might have a few. He's very frustrated. He's a very frustrated individual. I've taken the position, I have argued from a position that he is not a true believer in Scientology. I think that is an impossibility given how he does Scientology, because I know what Scientology says. I know what L. Ron Hubbard wrote. And what David Miscavige is doing is not what L. Ron Hubbard wrote. So it's interesting because it's still Scientology, it's still the Sea Org, and he still is complying in a specific, in a kind of way, in a general sort of way. Miscavige is complying with Hubbard's directions. But the really important stuff, the priority stuff, the basic root level Scientology stuff that would make the world a better place, or that would help ease relationships, or would make people get along better, because there are some parts of Scientology that move in that direction. Those things are all ignored by Miscavige. He doesn't push any of that stuff. He doesn't care about any of that stuff. He beats up people, he abuses people, he yells at people, and he creates a culture of that trickles down all the way to the lower levels of Scientology. It's bad all the way down because of him. So it's so the guy is he's nuts. And no, he's not OT8. Although he's seen the OT8 materials. It's like, I think I've been told contradictory things, but I think he got up to OT. I've heard either OT4 or OT7, and I'm not sure which one. But he did not do OT8.
What's the top?
OT8.
OT8, okay.
Yeah.
So can you like levitate at OT8 or whatever the fuck it is?
No, you cannot.
I don't know.
I want to use the Force.
L. Ron Hubbard was supposed to be super healthy because he was all clear. He was in the best. He's like Trump. Jesus.
Exactly. You got it.
Oh,
that's exactly right. There's a facade, and then there's the reality. And when Trump was not president, the facade was easier to keep up. There wasn't as much exposure. The exposure was more controlled. As the president, you got a microscope on you 24/7, and he can't deal with that. And so you see the real him come out from time to time, and it's nasty, and it's horrible, and it's awful. And that's who he really is.
So, toward the end here, I just want to mention that we have established now that Trump is pretty much L. Ron Hubbard. Except L. Ron Hubbard actually got people to buy his shit. Nobody fucking buys Trump shit. He just has money because he inherited it. L. Ron Hubbard, make it the old-fashioned way he conned people. All right? Let that be a lesson to y'all. What did he say? The thing about the best way to make money is start a religion?
Yeah, there's documented instances of that. And at least I should say definitely at least two. I believe I documented 3 of them in my book. Yeah.
Okay.
He really said that. But let's be clear. L. Ron Hubbard did not start all of Scientology and do it for the number of years that he did because he made it for somebody. Hubbard got bank from Scientology, massive bank. And, he was, he was L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, I encourage, and I want to ask you for some links, because I'm gonna need you to, if I could think, I'd put up 100 fucking links. I need like a couple of just summaries of what we talk, because like I said, there's a whole lot of shit you could look at. I mean, I've gone on the rabbit hole of looking up Scientology shit.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, I have 2 YouTube channels, and I would recommend that anybody watching this or checking this out now or in the future check out my channel, because I've posted over 750 videos at this point, and most of them are about Scientology. Not all of them by a long shot, but certainly a lot of them. And I've done a lot of talking about every aspect of this stuff. So you can check out my channel and look through the titles and see what's there. I've tried to organize it as best I can. With that many videos, it's kind of hard on YouTube to put it in some kind of sequence where you can access everything easily, but it is all there. And there's playlists and stuff on my homepage that you can get to that'll break down different aspects of it.
Is it under your name, or do you have a name?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is my name, Chris Shelton.
Okay.
And or if you Google Chris Shelton or specifically Chris Shelton Scientology or Chris Shelton Critical Thinker, that's what you'll get. My channel, I identify myself as a critical thinker at large, because I am much more than just an ex-Scientologist at this point. And I like to put myself out there that way. You can also find my blog that has all my content, including transcripts of a ton of my videos and stuff, at mncriticalthinking.com.
And all that stuff will be in the show notes, of course, when I post.
Awesome.
And Catherine says again, you have the best rabbit hole.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine.
So yeah, thanks for coming on. Like I want to plug you. I never even heard of you, and that's my fucking, obviously it's not because I'm just in a hole here. I have 2 cats and I live alone, so obviously.
All right.
But I heard you on Nate's show talking about the family, and you mentioned Scientology, and I was like, I gotta have that guy on. So
yeah,
and you were kind enough to jump around. I mean, it was only a couple days ago. So I really appreciate taking the time out to talk to me and relive all that. Where's you
no problem, man.
It's gotta be stressful. Yeah, so all the links will be on the show notes. Go watch them. And before we go, Mr. Shelton, I was promised a dad joke.
Oh, God, that's right. Okay. All right. What do you call a bear that doesn't have ears?
I don't know. What do you call a bear that doesn't have ears?
B.
Lord have mercy. That one stung.
I know, right? I love dad jokes. I love them. I also love Monty Python, by the way.
Oh,
and
so do I.
dry British humor. Love that
so
stuff.
So we can, we're talking again. So
cool, man.
Be back on for some shit. All right, well, everybody.
Thanks for coming around, folks.
Chris, bye. And until next time, y'all take it easy now, okay?